What's up, Michigan fans? Welcome back to Blade's Banner, final episode of the season. After a huge Michigan win over Ohio State, 13-10 in the Horseshoe, was an unbelievable upset victory. I think one of the biggest in the history of Michigan versus Ohio State. Here with Coach Thornblade, we're going to talk about a couple things today. We'll talk about Michigan, Ohio State. We'll talk about the college football playoff, and then, of course, we'll end with Michigan versus Alabama. Happy Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everybody out there. How you doing, Coach? How is everything going for you?
Everything's great. I hope everybody had a great holiday and I have a Happy New Year, upcoming Happy New Year, and we look forward to the first Michigan Alabama clash of the year, even though it'll be played at the 31st at noon, the Relia Quest Bowl. And I'm anxious to watch and see how both teams respond. And then, of course, we have the CFP that continues, and there's a lot of great matchups there. Many of the teams Alabama and Michigan have played on their schedule that are part of this playoff, and it's an exciting time, pro and college football. Although, from a personal standpoint, I wish there was not so much cross programming. They're making it tough on football fans. I like to watch both college and pro football, and I think to have pro football games when they're CFP games is a mistake, and I would rather see them rectify that. I think they will in the future.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
I did want to say a couple things, Rob. I wanted to say hello to a couple guys. We don't have too many people that listen to us, but a few of our subscribers that mean a lot to me personally. Mr. Sid Smith, who's Mr. Central Michigan, a great benefactor to the school, a graduate, and also a great Michigan fan, along with being Mr. Central Michigan. He's a great guy, and I'm a new but good friend of mine. And then also your old coach, John Schumann. John Schumann was the head coach of the PG program at Fork Union. And he is one of the greatest coaches I've ever seen, pro, college, or high school. He has helped thousands, well, maybe that's an exaggeration, but probably 1,000 kids.
Easily 1,000 kids.
And helped them become productive citizens. And he functioned in relative obscurity down there in Fork Union, Virginia, but he's a heck of a man and a great coach and a great person. And he's left a mark, his legacy. His own sons were wonderful players, but, impacted on a lot of kids. And I had the privilege of watching him coach and impact on young people. And he's a gifted, extraordinary guy. So hello to John.
Yeah, I mean, Coach, he had 2 Heisman Trophy winners, Vinny Testaverde and Eddie George. And then he had a couple, tons of guys go to the pros, but every year 100, I think he rostered about 100 kids and, got those kids placed from all the way from Division I to Division III football.
I've never seen anybody work harder, helping young people and getting them placed at colleges and universities. And so a lot of people owe him a great debt. And I'm telling you, this guy is a great coach, great person. VMI grad, guy's just an extraordinary person.
Yeah, absolutely. Good shout out for Coach Schumann.
Somebody should write that story. Somebody needs to write that story.
That would be one. That would be a great one. I don't know. There's some really good football movies out there. The one of that Clemson DB that took in his brother. Right. Remember the Titans. Yeah. This could be Schumann. The Schumann story would also be another great one.
Extraordinary guy.
Coach. Yeah, Coach. Appreciate you shouting those guys out. Now we got talk. We won't go too crazy about it. We could talk about that. We could do our own show about this, but I think you might have been the only person that I knew that believed that Michigan was going to win this game, and it happened like you said. Our defensive line played well. We stopped the run. We controlled where the field was played, the time of possession. We controlled the ball. And then on top of that, we won the kick game, Coach. So everything you said that needed to happen happened. Now we fought it at sometimes. We threw some in and
Well,
out.
two interceptions they gave us. They gave
Yes,
us. So,
yes.
the turnover margin, it evened out. We in the end we kicked better. They missed 2 out of 3 field goals.
That 34-yarder really hurt him. The one he
Yeah,
hooked.
yeah. That could have made a margin, but they hadn't used the field goal kicker through the year because they've been so successful in the red zone. So that's ever since the second half of the Oregon game, our defense has started to come together. And I believe that Coach Martindale came in probably with a big package because he's a pro coach. And it took a while for our players to digest it and understand his concept and to execute it. But they came on and we got better and better. Now, subsequently, we did lose to Indiana, but that was a 5-point loss. And then, of course, we played well against Northwestern, and that monumental upset of a really terrific Ohio State team who I think could win the whole thing. I think they're positioned to do it. And I think the Tennessee victory demonstrated that they have the resolve. But our defense has come on. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And it's essential that they play at that level. But the Ohio State game, I think we won it on the basis of more physical play up front. Football is still a game that's played on the line of scrimmage and won on the line of scrimmage on every level. And we will not see the likes of Mason Graham, extraordinary player for us, great All-American, first-round draft pick, and Grant, the other defensive tackle. So we had 2 defensive tackles that are going to be picked probably in the first round, and whoever gets them will get extraordinary players, gifted players. And in that game, those 2 guys really physically dominated the Ohio State line. Ohio State ran for 77 yards in that game. So I believe that the reason we run is we outgained them on the back of Khalil Mullins, our great back, and then we shut off their run and their great back, 2 great backs. But I really think that the Henderson kid is an extraordinary back.
Yeah.
So we did that.
Well, one great quote, Coach, I would interrupt you, is from Jim Harbaugh. He says, "A gift from the football gods,
Yeah.
Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant." That was in July 2022, before they even took a snap. He knew what he had coming up. I mean, he said they were a gift from the football gods, both of them.
Yeah,
So
extraordinary players, really
Yeah.
gifted players, tough,
Yeah.
physically tough. And they came to play that day, and the Ohio State offensive line will remember them.
Yeah.
Just like the Alabama offensive line will remember Mason Graham a year ago in the Rose Bowl when he was unbelievably destructive. That guy has to be doubled. And then Grant had tremendous push in this game. And although I don't know if we even sacked Howard, they were in his lap. And we created a bowl around Howard, and we did not let him escape.
Well, the pressure on the quarterback was immense. We were in his face. Like you said, I don't know if we sacked him or what. We might have got one, but we were in his face every time. He could not throw it without somebody in his face and having pressure on him.
We negated their to some degree. We negated that great receiver core they have, and it is great. I mean, there are 2 first-round draft picks, Smith and Ibuka, and you'll see them again. Smith came wide open, but only after he, I think,
Pass interference.
Yeah,
I mean, he
but
came off the
slammed into our defensive back and then came free. But that's okay. I mean, that's the game. They didn't see it. They didn't call it.
He doesn't. He's been doing it all season and getting away with it, and it's because he's such a physical receiver. I don't put him. I would keep doing it until you get called. I mean, you're when you're that physical and you catch a guy off his balance, he's backpedaling. It's hard.
2 players come together and they engage each other, Rob. I mean, the guy who's physically dominant typically will win it. So I don't discredit it for him. I don't think it's a purposeful thing, but if you're going to try to engage him, I think you make a mistake. I don't think that's how you defend him. I think unless you're bigger and stronger, and you better be, and you better have your legs bent and be ready to deliver a blow, because he's going to hit you and he's going to come off you. And he's got great speed and great ability to catch the ball. Anyway, those were the elements, I think. field position played a big part in it. We punted well. We had not punted well. Our net punt was continues to be under 38 yards. I mean, for the season, and we always talk about that being the most important play in football. Zavada is a great weapon for us. Our field goal kicker, he's extraordinary. You get within 56 yards, that ball is probably going to go through. He missed one field goal all season. That's because it was a bad snap, bad hold.
He got robbed this year on the kicker award. Wasn't even nominated.
And that doesn't matter. I mean, everybody recognizes he's a great kicker. And, of course, greatness is consistent excellence over time. So it's not just 1 year, so every year you got to be good and you got to be excellent, and then you'll be rewarded like that. So
he's coming back. He's coming back, Coach.
He's coming back, and there's no question that he'll be, I think he was all Big Ten, the old Big Ten kicker. So he'll get his recognition that is due him, and then eventually be a great kicker in pro football. He's an extraordinary kicker. So, that's the Ohio State game. It was a wonderful victory. No one expected that we would win, but people make a mistake. If they do not understand the magnitude of that game and what it means to both sides, and that the old cliche about throwing out the record applies. And our team was improving and has improved over time. We had a pretty, we said, actually, I think we digressed even a little bit during the season. But then once we settled on Warren, understood what we could do and couldn't do, and came up with a feasible game plan offensively. And the defense got better, and the special teams got better. And it resulted in a great victory in Ohio State. And then everybody who didn't understand that game figured that Tennessee would go in Ohio State stadium and beat them. And I thought there was no way, even though I have regard for Tennessee and that quarterback. That quarterback turned the ball over early, and Ohio State has a $20 million roster. And the reason they paid that much is they are good.
Well, and one thing I want to point out is everybody's saying, well, we should have passed like that against Michigan and this and that. Well, they did try to pass like that against us. They had 33 pass attempts against Ohio State. Against us, they had, how many did they have? They had 31 against Tennessee, and they had 33 against us. So it was a testament to our defensive coordinator. The way we played zone, we understood. He double covered guys. So he had somebody over top, he had somebody underneath. And then he also brought pressure. So he was leaving zones open for Will Howard to find because we couldn't cover everybody. But we covered that up with how we moved on our line, our defensive line, and how they switched positions and how they went over and under. That created pressure, and he couldn't see where to find the zone. So
we also tackled well.
Yes, we tackled really well, and we played physical. We were physical with the receivers. We made them get off of us. We held them sometimes when we knew we weren't gonna. There wasn't gonna be a highlight of a 50-yard touchdown on us. He told them that. He said, "Hold them, bring them down into our red zone, and we'll play. We'll put Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, and we'll play those guys." And then the last thing I want to point out is, like you said, it's a physical game. Makari Page, you want to run your quarterback. Makari Page came down and lit Will Howard up. That's
why I stopped him short of a first down with a tremendous hit, a fair, clean hit, tackle. It's still a martial sport. Now, a lot of it's played on the perimeter now, but it's still about blocking and tackling, and it's still the games are still won on the line of scrimmage. You have to be able to protect your quarterback, and defensively, you have to pressure the quarterback, and then the defensive backs and linebackers have to close, and they have to tackle in the open field. That's the way the sport is now.
Well, what do you think? Tell me what you think about Martindale's game plan, Coach. I mean, we held him to. I mean, how many yards passing? It was. What did we hold him to?
I'm not certain. I know 77 yards rushing. And when you take the rushing game away like that and force them into passing situations, it allows the defensive coordinator, of course, to defend the field differently when he's forced them into passing situations and negated the rushing game.
Yeah.
And I think now, I don't think Martindale's philosophy has changed all year. I think it took a while, and I talked about this when Coach Sharon got the job. He had to put an entirely new. Jim took just about everybody, and there are a few coaches that remained, but he had to put an entirely new staff together. And if people think it's easy to make the staff cohesive and get on the same page, it's a learning process and it takes time. And it also is an adjustment for the players. And so that started to come together. I think we saw that, and I really believe we could have beat Indiana and maybe should have beat Indiana. They only scored 20 points on us, and although Signetti thinks they're the greatest team in the history of the sport, I felt like they were vulnerable, and we were able to stop their offense the second half. Although we weren't able to move the ball on offense, consequently, they won the game. But it started to come together, at least the defensive concept. Now, we have a new offensive coordinator, and I guess he'll be the offensive coordinator for this game. And we also have a new offensive lines, a new offensive analyst, Coach Casalt, who's going to bring a lot to the party. That coached offensive line in pro football, and I think he's going to help our offense considerably. And he, in fact, has raved about there's going to be a new season, and we're going to have a lot of new players we're going to rely on in this game.
That's definitely something.
A lot of good things about the young backs that are going to have to play and have to play good when they fill in for our two leading rushers who have departed. One of them who really was integral, along with the two defensive tackles in the Ohio State victory.
Well, you saw Caleb Mullins won us the USC game and then won us the Ohio State game, breaking away. And he broke Jack Sawyer's tackle, too, the one that was so torn up about it.
Is a great back.
Yeah.
And, pro football, it's interesting. They started to sort of the backs became less valuable. They wanted to draft them later on, and they were interchangeable. But now we see what the great back has done in Philadelphia. And then the resurgence of the great Derrick Henry, and how important a great back can be to your offense. The guys who can break tackles, and then also at the end of that, a run, make you miss and accelerate and make big plays, are still valuable resources and assets for any offense. So although their value in pro football has been, I think that's going to change as people look around. You saw what Coach Campbell did. He took Gribbs in the first round, and everybody criticized him, and that guy's been a tremendous asset to the Detroit Lions. So now we lose Mullings. Mullings, in my estimation, was a great back for us this year. He started as a linebacker from Milton Academy. But then he evolved into being one heck of a tough, hard-nosed runner who had the speed, the ability, once he broke a tackle, and he did break tackles. He's a tackle breaker to make another guy miss and then give you a big play. And we talked about the Ohio State game. Now I don't want to look backwards. It was a great victory, and the Michigan fans have reveled in it. And a season-saving victory in the minds of most Michigan fans as we went through this transition. But I do remind people that we lost 13 or 14 players to the Professional Football League off the national championship team. And now we go into, and we're going to play a tremendous opponent whose case for being part of the CFP is a valid one, although they had 3 losses. Without those players, Grant and Graham and Mullings and Loveland, these wonderful players, Josiah Stewart, that are going on to play pro football.
Well, before we get there, Coach, I think it's a perfect transition into the Tennessee game, Ohio State, Tennessee, the college football playoff. I wanted to, obviously, you said the sum of one game doesn't equal the sum of another. You saw Ohio State come out, all cylinders firing. Scored 42 points on a good Tennessee team that beat Alabama. And then
you saw by a touchdown in Knoxville. and
Yes,
Knoxville.
in Knoxville. But then you saw a couple other games that weren't really great games. I mean, what is your estimation of the college football playoff? Should Alabama? Should Ole Miss? Should Miami Hurricane? Well, Miami lost by a point, but Ohio State, Miami Hurricanes, all these
Well,
teams that
Cam Ward sat. I mean, their quarterback sat down the second half.
I know.
Yeah, and that cost
So
them the game probably.
what
And you
what
know,
do you,
one thing this is one thing I've seen in these bowl games, and with the 12-team playoff, these bowl games have become less. Although there's been some great competitions, have seemed to become less important. Certainly in the minds of most fans. Now, people are going to be interested in certain games. Michigan and Alabama are, their marquee names with great followings. But when you look at the stands, they're not well attended. These bowl games. So there's two thoughts. I think they really got to think about going to a 16-game playoff, and then there'll be buys. I think there should be buys. And I also think because this year they needed to get the 12 best teams in there, but I don't think they should do it at the expense of, for instance, the ACC conference. And we're going to see how good Arizona State is. But I think there is, and I think this is not any different than any other year. There's the top 6 to 8 teams, and they truly are they truly are the best teams in the country. Now the SEC is cannibalizing itself because they have, South Carolina was a great team, although I think they lost their bowl game. And they play each other. And so it's hard to go through there unscathed, I think if Indiana, and a lot of people feel like if Indiana had to play an SEC schedule, they might not have been selected because there is a top half of the Big Ten and then the bottom half, in which we were a part of. We were 7th in the Big Ten. And although we became a very competitive team, particularly at the end, I think, and in in the second half of the Oregon game when we started, we have not been a prolific offense. That's to say the least.
South
So I
Carolina
think, I
plays?
think the best teams are the best,
Yeah,
and the other teams. I think Boise State though is going to give a challenge to Penn State.
I do
And
too.
we should remember this, that home field advantage in college football is a big deal.
All the home
And
teams won.
also,
Yeah, all the home teams won.
absolutely. And a lot of teams from the South had to come up to cold weather, which they are unaccustomed to playing in. Now,
Well,
I think it was good for college football. There's a lot of excitement. And then people said it was unusual for that many Tennessee, there were a lot of Tennessee fans that came up to play in Columbus. But that's because they had a ticket allotment. Historically, you can't get in there because all this, Ohio State has 100,000, just like Michigan, season ticket holders. So the opponent usually has 5,000 fans, but they separated the tickets because it was a bowl game, much like they do in college basketball. So that's why there were so many Tennessee fans there. But
I appreciate you pointing that out. Everybody was like, "Oh my god!" I was like,
"That's not because of lack of enthusiasm by Ohio State fans." Although, and I think this might be to their discredit. They need to look at it a little more rationally. There are a lot of people that said that if we do win a national championship, and they think they can, and they can, they're a gifted team, that there should be an asterisk by it because they lost to Michigan. Now that should never be the case. If you can go through this playoff system and win a national championship, you will earn it.
Well, what blows my
It
mind?
means a lot, but it's not the end of the world. It
What
means a lot
blows
too.
what blows my mind, Coach, is that all these guys are lighting up Kirk Herbstreit. Kirk Herbstreit played for Ohio State. His dad played there. You know more than me. And then he's been on TV for the past 25 years or whatever, being an Ohio State homer. He says one thing, and these guys are just they're done with him. Like
They
he's
consider it a betrayal.
yeah.
But they, they're passionate about their team. Nick Saban even said that college football fans need to get a life, and they're psychotic, and so it's still a game. These are young men, although some of them are millionaires now, but they're young people. The idea was you get a degree in your chosen field, you compete, you have a great time, you learn all the wonderful lessons you can learn. from playing the game, teamwork. You make lifetime relationships, but then you go on and become a productive citizen, much like John Schumann produced productive people that became, because of what he taught and what they learned playing football and under his guidance, become productive citizens later on in life, because you're not going to play the game forever. So there's still kids that are 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, in some cases older now. Some of them played 7 years because of COVID, but they're still young people. And so young people are going to make mistakes, and it's hard to win these games. It's highly competitive, particularly among the highest echelon. And these teams that are well coached and they have a lot of great players are hard to play and hard to win. So it's hard to beat Ohio State. And but it's, by the same token, it's hard to beat Michigan. Even they learned even in a down year. And so we will never overlook them or take any team for granted. That's not how you do it in any competition, business, life. You respect the opponent and you prepare. And you better put your best. You better give your best and give your best effort, or you shall not win.
Yeah.
And that's how it is in this extremely competitive environment we have in college football. And it's fun to watch, but we got to keep it in some perspective.
I think we were on a 9-game losing streak until 2021 when Haskins ran for 20. I mean, I'm just saying. I'm not telling Ohio State fans to be okay with losing to Michigan. And it looked bleak. I mean, we would talk about it and we'd say, what are we going to do? How are we going to play how are we going to compete? We haven't competed with these guys in so long. And you would always tell me that there's a chance and this and that. And now it felt like we were never going to, especially when the fourth down call with JT Barrett, when they screwed us on that, I go, man, when is this going to end? So I know how they feel, but that was 9 years. We had 9 years of it. So
call that our long and Mason blue nightmare.
Yeah.
Like everything else, what goes up must come down. What goes down must come up, and everything evens out. And we got Coach Harbaugh to come back and reinstitute toughness, physical toughness into the program. Jimmy believes in running the ball, and Coach Schembechler always said, "I run the ball because my defense practices against me, and if they can stop the rush or stop the run, then I have a chance to win." It also steels your players. It makes them tough and physical. And so it's an important part of football. And it's still a physical game. And so now it's evolved to the run-pass option, RPO, and things like that. But you still have to be able to run the ball successfully, particularly in short yard situations, to win. And you have to have a good conversion rate on third and now fourth down. When the analytics have changed the game, that was always a punt down. And you have to do that by getting movement at the point of attack and on line of scrimmage.
Well, that'll
be essential in this game.
Yeah,
for Michigan.
I was going to say, Coach, so that we've went over on Ohio State. We talked about it longer than we said we were going to.
Great victory. Now it's behind us, and now Alabama is in front of us.
Well, the CFP. Before we get to Alabama, CFP. You got any predictions? You think it's just going to be the favorite team again? I mean, is Texas just going to beat Arizona State? Is Penn State going to beat Boise? Is Georgia going to beat Notre Dame? Is Oregon going to beat Ohio State? I mean, where do you think? Like, I think I always thought Oregon was going to play Georgia, but after the way Ohio State played, and as what you see in pro football, it is almost impossible, near to impossible, to beat a team that you are that equally matched twice in a season. It is super.
Rematch is always tough.
It's very tough. It's possible, but you saw it when Alabama beat LSU in the national championship that you went down to the game to see. I mean, LSU beat them in the regular season. Then in the national championship, they couldn't even get past the 50-yard line.
Well, the concept was, I think, although I love my friend Les Miles, I think he entered into it with a bad concept. He was going to rely on an option attack, which was a totally new offense, although we had a gifted quarterback that could execute it. But I don't think they, option football is assignment football. So when you flash that safety, you got to be able to throw the ball. we call it option passing, and I don't think they were prepared to do that. Consequently, they never moved it. But it was really, really a gifted Alabama team. And let's face it, Coach Saban goes down as the winningest coach in the history of college football. And so, he gifted coach. So, but that said about that game, a long time ago down there in New Orleans, I think Ohio State, and I have great regard for I think the best quarterback in college football this year has been the Oregon quarterback.
Yeah.
I think he's good. I think the ball comes out fast. I think Lanning has a great concept. I think the team reacts to him and plays for him. I think they close on the ball. And although they throw the ball out a lot, but it's in effect a running play. He gets it right out there. When they throw those out to the receiver, those screens, those quick plays the receiver, but they block. They really get out there and block. They get their offensive linemen out there, and the receivers block. So that's been effective for them. I think Ohio State's vulnerability has been one of the cornerbacks, but I think the safeties are really good. So I think Ohio State's going to come up with a great plan. The Ohio State defense has been the best in the country, and we got 13 points, scored 13 points on them. They had been giving up 10, and then of course they generated all those turnovers early against Tennessee and thwarted their offense. Their coach there, Hypo, has a great offensive concept too. He puts those receivers way out there, spreads the entire field, and they were able to stop them, and they came out motivated. And I think that was a great antidote for the malaise and the disappointment they felt after our game. And I think they're back, and I think they're on a mission, and they have a lot of gifted players. So I believe that that's going to be a closely contested game, but I think Ohio State's going to beat them in the rematch. They should have probably won the first game. It was poor clock management at the end that cost them the game, although, as we have found out.
Ryan Day's famous for that. He did it in our game, too.
Now, the field goal kicker who came back, their field goal kicker who missed 2 critical kicks against us, came back and kicked well for them against, and a couple long ones against Tennessee. So if he has his confidence, and they take points when they get it, and Howard plays within himself, I think that'll be a tough game. Now, I think Notre Dame is loaded. I think they have a lot of gifted athletes. I think they react to their coach well. After that disappointing, everybody wrote them off after the Northern Illinois loss, but they came back, and they gained momentum. I do not think they played the toughest schedule in the country because they play ACC teams. And I think the SEC and the Big Ten is where the great teams, not that there's not individually great teams in the other leagues, but down the entire schedule. I think it's a tougher road. But I think they really have gifted players. The Georgia quarterback is out, but I think the backup's a good player. So, and I think Kirby Smart's a great coach. So that's going to be a terrific matchup, and I consider that a toss-up. Boise State is the outlier. I have not watched them. They have a great back. I know they have really good defensive backs, and Boise State has a wonderful tradition. So Penn State, who played really well at home and took SMU apart, it's going to be an interesting game. But I think Penn State should prevail because I think probably across the board they have better players. And then we come down to Texas, and I have a lot of regard for Texas. I think Sarkisian's got a tremendous offensive mind. They played that game against Clemson without one of their receivers. So, I think they'll beat Arizona State. Do I have the matchups right?
Yep.
Arizona State had a great season, but they haven't had successive great seasons. And typically the teams that ultimately win this thing have gotten close prior to winning it. And then they build on that disappointment and they come back with a resolve and the required experience it's needed to get through, which has become even a more difficult road with the addition of these teams to win the national championship. That said, all these teams in the second round could potentially win the national championship. I really believe that. But so, I want to see personally a Big Ten team win. And, we got two of them out there. I think Notre Dame ought to rethink themselves and join the league, but some period, that's all economic, those decisions. But I think, we have a lot of Midwest teams in this thing right now, and it'll be interesting to see how it comes out. Texas certainly is great quarterback. I think the best quarterback still is at Oregon, so they could win the whole thing. But Howard also has the ability, the Ohio State quarterback, to make great plays, along with the quarterback at Penn State, who is getting better every single game he plays. So that's how I see that. And that brings us to the matchup that's most important to us.
I was going to say, yeah. New Year's Eve day, 12 p.m., Michigan versus Alabama, our second time playing them in 2024. Going to be a heck of a matchup. Now, Coach, I have so many questions about this. I want you to kind of tell me about it. Like, can our early signees that are practicing with our team, can they play? Can our transfer portal guys play? We got a guy that is in the transfer portal that's going to play quarterback for us, that had a great run for us against Ohio State. We got all these new rules in a bowl game, in a new bowl game era, where two blue bloods of college football, Michigan versus Alabama, where Alabama, all their guys are playing. All their guys are going to come back and play.
And they lost a back who actually has come to Michigan.
Okay,
not many. They lost a couple of wide receivers.
So what's the rules? Do you got to be enrolled in class, or who? Do you know, Coach? Like, who can play?
The rules are evolving, changing on a daily basis, and who knows? I know, like for instance, Alec Orji, our quarterback, who's done a great job with a Wildcat for us, and made a big play in the Ohio State game.
Yeah,
is going to play for us. He practiced with us, going to play for us, but he's in a transfer portal. So I'm not certain, how that works. The guys who declared for pro football are out. Okay. And I talked about those guys. And the guys that are out are great players for us. I mean, the guys that are out are high draft picks.
There are Leonards. Yeah.
Yeah, and Stewart, the outside linebacker. Now, from a defensive standpoint, I think that we're going to be okay. Because the guys who play behind them, Benny and a couple of those guys, have got a lot of snaps in. Because one of the things they do with defensive linemen is they rest them quite a bit. Although, this year Graham and Grant played more than they ever did. They used to play like 50% of the time when they were fresh. They probably played 70% of the time. But we've had guys that with game experience coming in that are big defensive tackles that are physical. TJ Guy is going to play in this game, so we lose Stewart, but he has proven to be a guy who can get to the passer. And then we're pretty much intact in the defensive backfield. That is really come on after a lot of missed assignments, missed tackles, coverage mistakes, has really started to get the concept, and of course made a couple big plays in the Ohio State game, interceptions. So I think defensively, what we have to do is stop Milroe. We've talked about the evolution of the game, and there were times in the past. Well, that's my friend John Wangler, but I'm not going to talk to him. There were times in the past when you could have an average quarterback and a good running game and a great defense and kick the ball well and win the whole thing. Those days are gone. The quarterback, it's essential that you have a great quarterback and great quarterback performances, devoid of turnovers, to win and win championships. And they have a great quarterback, Milroe. He's potentially a first-round draft pick. He led their team in rushing with close to 800 yards rushing, and what the heck, he threw for well over 4,000. How many yards? He threw the ball all over the place, and he's extraordinary, gifted guy, but they rely on him heavily. Now, last year we were able to get to him and sack him on a regular basis, and we have to do the same thing this year in order to be successful. And that'll mean at appropriate times we put pressure on him, but he has been able to find open receiver and man coverage. So we're going to have to spy him, and we're going to have to keep him in a bowl. We can't let him escape and get on the perimeter where he has a run pass option. If he does that, I think that it'll be to the great benefit of of Alabama. And so I think Milroe is who we have to contain. That said, the board, what he likes to do is, I looked at it. He right now they are 60% pass and 40% run. That doesn't mean he disdains from the run, and we saw him last year when he, coached Washington to the national championship game with a great quarterback, Penix, and we were able to do the same thing to him last year, and that was a result of a tremendous pressure by the defense and defensive line. So we have to do the same thing to Milroe. We have to negate him. We have to take away what he does well. Now, he has thrown 10 interceptions. And I will say this, Alabama has scored 60 touchdowns this year. 20 of them have been scored by Milroe. So certainly we have to have regard for the other players on their team. There are other skill position players that are going to get the ball, but he's the guy who's going to deliver the ball to them. Now, offensively, they have played great defense. They've only given up 17 points a game. And when you look at their record, other than the Oklahoma game, which they really played poorly in, and then Vandy, as it turns out, was a pretty good team, and Vandy was waiting in the bushes, and I'm sure they didn't expect they were coming off a big victory. I think, and they went up there to Nashville, and then Vandy got them, and then they lost a closely contested game in Knoxville by a touchdown. So this is a 9-3 team that believes they should have been in a college football playoff, along with every single person in the state of Alabama, except for the Auburn people, who are happy they didn't get in. Everything I think is, morale is to the physical is 4 is to 1. Coach Yost said that at Michigan many years ago. So it's a mentality in which you approach this game. And it's a choice. We all make choices every day. So as an individual and as a team and as a coaching staff, you make a choice. I think last night that BYU felt that they had been unnecessarily maligned and left out of the opportunity, and they proved that they're a great team. And I think by the same token, Colorado was not ready to play mentally. So Michigan has got to be at their very best. I believe that Alabama is going to come prepared to play. When you play Alabama or you play Michigan, it's hard not to get excited. And we have a history. And we played each other last year. And I'm sure Alabama wants some revenge over that loss in the Rose Bowl, which really was Coach Saban's last game. And it propelled us to the national championship. The confidence our team felt after that victory against a really, really, really fine Alabama team. And we should remember that these are Coach Saban's players. And Coach Saban always had good players. And Coach Saban, they called him a micromanager because he was a technique coach. And he coached you, footwork, everything. He demanded perfection. He knew you couldn't get it. And that's the mark of a great coach, a great teacher. And Kalen DeBoard has proven that he is a great coach. And we have our good friend down there, the offensive coordinator, your good friend, Nick Sheridan, a Michigan guy. Yep. And I'm sure he's excited about them trying to move the ball on our defense. But I will say this, that I read Coach Martindale's, our defensive coordinator's comments, and he's enthusiastic about the attitude of the team going into this game. And also enthusiastic about our backs, our young backs, Hall, who played some for us.
Marshall. I think Marshall's going to play.
Marshall was a great back at Muller High School in Cincinnati and Ohio State back of the year, I believe, are certainly regarded as one of the great players in Ohio. Great running backs in Ohio, right? Is that where he's from? Is that
Yeah.
wrong?
No, I'm pretty sure that's where he's from.
Those guys.
No, he went to Westchester. Or yeah,
Yeah,
Archbishop Moeller. He's from Westchester. Yeah.
yeah, went to Moeller.
Yeah. Hey,
So
another thing I'll say about Herbstreit's kid, everybody's worried about him all the if you're the starting guy at St. Xavier in Cincinnati, you can play some football. You're a football player now. And he's coming in with Bryce, so he'll be able to develop. I mean, look at a lot of the kids that we've developed over the years. I don't want to get off track, but just talking about Archbishop Moeller, St. Xavier of Cincinnati, these are programs that produce highly talented kids.
I think if Ohio State had wanted Herb Street's kid, they would have gone.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But I will say this about him: he's a coach's. Herb Street's not a coach, but his dad was a player at Ohio State, and Herbie was a player at Ohio State, and they're football players. So this kid grew up in a football family, has a football mentality. He played at one of the great programs in the state of Ohio, and he's going to come in and learn and compete and evolve and develop. And someday, I believe that he's going to contribute in a big way to Michigan. All these kids, sometimes they want to escape, not all of them, but they want to escape, their father's shadow. And I think it does show Herb Street's regard for the program and what happens there and the education. And I think he understands it's not too dissimilar from Coach Hayes's approach at Ohio State. Harbaugh learned from Schembechler, Carr, and Moeller, and those guys. They're part of that family, and the values are the same. And so Herb Street's kid's gonna be fine, and he'll come and compete and do a great job and be a great leader in the locker room, and I think he'll be a great asset. But they shouldn't get, if your kid goes somewhere else other than your alma mater, it's like Coach Carr's grandson went to Notre Dame to play quarterback. And although I would have liked to see him at Michigan, he is now my favorite player on the Notre Dame team. So that's how we look at it. We want him to do well. So Alabama is a formidable foe for Michigan.
And their coaching staff wants to. We beat them in the national championship last year. You said Nick Sheridan earlier. We beat those guys in the national championship last year, and it wasn't, I think we beat them pretty good, but it was close at one point. And, they're ready to come back and prove something that what they can do against Michigan for sure.
And this is Alabama. I mean, and I told you, Saban recruited these kids and coached them.
Yeah.
And, so they don't go into a game thinking they're going to lose. They go in a game thinking they're going to win. It's Alabama. There's a tremendous tradition there, and there's a culture there. And I'm sure that culture has been continued. Now, they stumbled a couple times this year. Saban didn't stumble. And I'm sure there's criticism, down there because they're like Columbus. They expect to win every single game. And, we've got to remember, if you can win 10 games in college football, that's a monumental accomplishment. They won 9 games. And they lost to Vandy by 5 points. Oklahoma, I think at that point it's perplexing.
I couldn't believe that. Yeah.
Well, they were right at the end. They had played Mercer before, which was not a competitive game for them. And then they were probably, I don't know if they're looking forward to Auburn or anything, but they weren't prepared to play that game, and Oklahoma was, and I believe it was at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And so that was the game they needed. They needed to win that game in order to make their case for the college football playoffs. And had they won that game, but Ole Miss did the same thing. South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M, who lost the game the other night to SC. Interestingly enough, all those teams were in the running for a position in the college football playoffs.
Well, I think South Carolina plays Illinois on the 31st. The Cheez-It Bowl.
Game. So the big deal is who's playing. I know that Michigan is the heart of their team is not playing. Smullings, Donovan Edwards, who was a great leader for us, Loveland, our great defensive back who's been out with a turf toe for months, All-American.
Will Johnson. Kenneth
and
Grant.
and then Graham, who was one of the greatest players ever played in the history of Michigan, and not too far behind him is Grant, the other defensive tackle. And there's a pair, maybe the best pair to ever play. And we had some great ones. We had Steele and Hall, and we had some great tandems. But those guys were extraordinary. And along with Josiah Stewart, who came off the edge and put a lot of pressure on quarterbacks, and they had to pay attention to him.
He was a menace against Alabama last year. I wish we really had him this year.
Yeah. So those guys are out. So that means, what does that mean? You step up. So it's an opportunity for new players to distinguish themselves and to come in and say, "Hey, I'm here, and I'm ready to pick up the mantle and carry on in the great tradition of Michigan." So when you're Michigan, you don't go into a game expecting to lose. You go into a game expecting to win. That's how we do it. And I don't care what the results of the season. That's over. Lou Holtz always says this is a brand new season. So we have to play offense, and we have to run the ball successfully. We are not. Our top.
I think we only lost one offensive lineman,
and I think he was a backup, a center.
Yeah.
So we're intact there. Now, Loveland was a great blocker, but Klein's going to have to. He played the Ohio State game, and he's going to have to show up. And Bredesen is playing. He's our lead blocker. So I think what we have to do is, and I hope we do this. I hope the quarterback gets under center. We get in the I formation at times, or we lead Bredesen as an H-back, his lead back, and we run those inside zone plays, and we run the ball effectively. If we cannot run the ball effectively and rush for at least 150 yards, it's going to be tough for us to beat Alabama.
Yeah.
Because along with that goes, time possession. And the more we keep the ball out of Milroe's hands, the better off we are. Now, we've lost our best receivers. Loveland, an All-American first-round pick, tight end. And then Morris left, a transfer, who was our third best receiver. And our second best receiver was Donovan Edwards. So we lost those guys. So now we're going to rely on Samaj J. Morgan, and Bell, and Klein, the tight end.
Hey, don't forget about O'Leary.
O'Leary's going to be a receiver out there, and O'Leary can make plays. But right now, we don't have a guy other than Bell that's going to run past you. So now we have not been effective passing the ball. So it's going to have to be possession passing. It's going to have to be play action passing on runs down. But we have to run the ball effectively. We have to make the Alabama linebackers. We're not going to scramble either for big plays. And Davis Warren has to play within himself. No turnovers. Now Michigan is still on turnover margin for the season. It's -4, and that has been our albatross. One of the things we have done this year, and we haven't done in the past, is we turn the ball over, and we cannot do that. We turned it over twice to Ohio State, but we got 2 back, fortunately. If they win a turnover ratio battle, we will lose also. Then the other part of it is, and we did this against Ohio State, is we have to kick well. Now, our punter is gone. He went to Florida, Doman. Now, we have not punted well this season. Our net punt is 37 yards. Their net punt is, let me see here. Their net punt has been 43.5. So the punt is still the most important play in football. It dictates field position, and short punts will kill you. And punt returns will kill you. So we have to cover, and we have to punt well. We have to net punt for over 40 yards, and we have to rely on Zavada, and we get close there. We have to take points. And we have to make Milroe play from behind. Now, can we do that? I don't know. We can't let them get a big margin on us. We can't let Milroe escape. We have to spy on him. We have to sack him. We have to make him uncomfortable in the pocket. And so I think those are, so it's the old thing. We have to play offense. We have to understand what we can do well. We're not going to beat anybody by passing up and down the field. And if we get behind, we're not in a position to throw the ball and catch up quickly. We don't have those kind of athletes right now on our team. And then we have to run the ball and stay within ourselves, not turn it over offensively. By the same token, our defense has got to continue to play great defense like they did against Ohio State. They have to deny Milrose. They have to sack him, keep him within that bowl I talked about. So if we fold in there and we give him an opportunity to escape and give him the run pass option, he has proven that he can be devastating. So we got to get to him and not let him out and threaten the perimeter. And then we have to call a great game. And that'll be interesting. We have a new offensive coordinator that came from North Carolina, coach for Mac Brown there. Mac Brown was one of the great coaches in the history of college football. Coach Belichick is going to succeed him there, and that's going to be interesting too. But our offensive coordinator will be fun to see what he does. And now it's time for these young running backs running behind Bredesen, who's one of the top fullbacks in the country, to get going. And I'd like to see us take the ball under center and come downhill.
Yeah.
And one of the things you do when you take the ball from center, and the running backs can run downhill. It's harder to run the ball out of the shotgun.
Oh yeah,
effectively. So I want to run downhill and get positive yards, and get in a manageable second down situation where you do have the run pass option, and we can do our play action possession passing. By the same token, when we've won big games, it's we need to make some plays. We need to make some big plays offensively. And so it's up to the young guys. It's a new season and in a lot of ways a new team and a new offensive coordinator. So we got to get going. We got to have the enthusiasm. We got to play within ourselves. We got to play with pride. You are Michigan. You are expected to put your very best out there. That is the definition of a Michigan man. When you play, you leave nothing out there. You put it all on the field, and you give your very best. And then at the end, you are a gentleman and a sportsman. I won't go into what happened at the Ohio State game, but we're not going to behave like that. That's not what you do, and no team should behave like that. We'll play the game from the kickoff to the till the time runs out at the end of the fourth quarter, and that's it. And then you shake the opponent's hand and you go to the locker room and you behave like a gentleman. That's what we're going to do, and so it's going to be exciting. I think people are looking forward to it because it's a precursor to the Penn State-Alabama game. It'll be played on noon, and it's true, like you said, two of the blue bloods of college football, and I think it'll demonstrate a choice. So as a staff and as a team, as a player, you're going to make a choice. You're going to go out there and be your very best, and you're going to give your very best, and it's a competition, and you represent your school, your parents, your teammates, and you get your ass out there, and you go. And you go to play, and you go to win.
Well, from a fan's perspective, I'm like kind of excited to see all these new guys. Like, I want to see what Hall and Marshall can do. Like, I know we're playing Alabama, and I still want to win. But it's kind of like spring ball, or like when like there's like a
fourth quarter if you're ahead, and then the young players come in. Everybody gets excited when they make plays.
Exactly.
It's a precursor to what's going to happen in the future.
And like the guys on defense, I want to see Benny, like Benny. Rashawn Benny playing a full game, like getting all those snaps those other guys got.
We know he can play.
And then Derek Moore. Derek Moore could go to the NFL. He got enough snaps. He had 2 sacks, 12 something tackles, something. He's got enough to go to the NFL. But for him to get all those snaps, Josiah Stewart was saying, I would like to see how he develops and how he plays. So those two guys on offense, those two guys on defense, I don't think are losing receivers and stuff. Unfortunately, I wish it was a big factor, but we pass for 100 yards a game. So it's not going to crazily change what you've seen from hey buddy, give me 1 second.
Here's my top guy. That's my future star.
You're doing to Papa?
Yeah, I'm talking to Papa. All right, go out. I'll be right out there, okay?
So I'm going to pick up where you left off. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
It's a new season. Coach Moore, we have watched Coach Moore develop this season. This is the first time he's ever been a head coach.
Yep.
And I think a turning point for him, and I mentioned this, and we were playing I believe it was Northwestern, one of those teams that we beat soundly. And one of our players committed a personal foul.
Yeah.
A stupid play. Coach Moore grabbed him as he came off and had a talk with him. I also know that he had a talk with the offensive line after the first quarter of the Indiana game and after the first quarter of the Oregon game, and they played much better. So I think he understands that as a head coach, you got to be tough, you got to be demanding. Now they have to know you're on your side. That's part of leadership. And I think Coach Moore learned a lot this season, and as you should, as we all do our first year in anything. And he got better. So as the old coach said, you never stay the same. You either get better or you get worse. So let's get better today. And I believe Michigan certainly they got better during the course of the season, and he demonstrated that with this tremendous effort.
Well, and the last thing I wanted to point out, Coach, too, I was talking about the new players I'm going to get to see and how exciting that is, and the precursor for the Penn State Boise game, and what that all looks like. I think we're going to get a lot of viewership, and people are going to be excited for Michigan. Probably why they put us against Alabama in the first place, because we travel well and the economic part of it. But I'm also looking forward to seeing our defensive backs play that same game plan that they played against Jeremiah Smith and the Ohio State Buckeyes. Because this kid, Ryan Williams, I just want to say this really quick. Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith, both reclassified and are unbelievably 18-year-olds. I've talked about it all season. Two 18-year-old freshmen that are, I think, the two top receivers in college football. Maybe not statistically, but they will be by the end of they will be the best. And
they feel good about those kids.
Ryan Williams, I mean, Jeremiah Smith he's a beast. You see him get off blocks. You see him block people. You see how physically talented it is. You talk about, the way you move and the way you run routes and stuff. That's Ryan Williams. He reminds me like Devontae Smith, Desmond Howard, these kind of type of guys that can move their bodies in such ways. So, I'm really excited to see that matchup as well. What is our game plan? What does Wink Martindale do with losing those two guys up front and then playing Alabama with Jalen Milroe and Ryan Williams? They have good running backs. They're not, the running backs they've had in the past, but I want to see that. That's the last thing I'll say about the game.
And we don't know that necessarily because they're young running backs. The guys are going to replace, Justin Haynes. We don't know how good they are, just like people. Now, Hall, our running back, I think 22, they've raved about him in practice all year long, and they've always said he should get more snaps, but it was very difficult, when he had Edwards and Mullings ahead of him.
Yeah.
And Mullings by the end of the year was hard to handle.
Yeah.
State found that out, and we wish those guys all the best in a great, great career, professional opportunity in a career. So it's going to be fun. It's Alabama, University of Michigan. There's a history between these two teams. I remember when Tom Brady beat them in the Orange Bowl one year that I think spelled the doom for their head coach at the time. And so there are the blue bloods of college sports in general, and specifically football. These are Kalen DeBoer's one of the finest coaches in the country, and he's proven that. He's took his team last year to the national championship, got a young staff. And I feel strongly about Sharon Moore. He's a fine young man. He's getting better all the time. And, Sharon said when he got the job, don't worry, we're still going to slam. And Ohio State found out we're still going to slam.
Yep.
Which means we're going to play physical at the line of scrimmage. He's an old lineman from Oklahoma, and he believes in that. And so we're going to come off the ball, we're going to block, and we're going to play tough on the line of scrimmage. And if we do that, and we contain Milroe, and kick well, make no mistakes, no fumbles, no stupid penalties. Alabama's been a penalty team. They're almost 77 yards a game in penalties. We're only 41, I believe, averaging 41. But no dumb offsides, no stupid penalties by hitting somebody out of bounds. Play within yourself and be at your very best and be proud of who you are. You're wearing that great headgear and that uniform, and you're playing against one of the great programs in the history of the sport, where the great Brer Bryant coached, Joe Namath played a lot with a lot of other great players. So it's a wonderful matchup, and we look forward to it. And I'm confident if Michigan plays within itself and plays tough physical football, and that's what we have to do. It contains this great Milroe that we can come out on top. But it's going to be fun to watch, that's for certain.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, Coach. I really appreciate you taking the time out today. Let's everybody come together as a Michigan fan base and root for us on the 31st and go blue.
All right, man. Go blue, and maybe we'll talk to you spring football and give you a review.
Yeah, let's do that.
And as we expand our network. But thanks to everybody who's listened, whether they've liked it or not, all those members of our family that give us likes.
Yeah.
We appreciate it, and Happy New Year. And be safe. Home early, no nonsense.
Amen.